And Chronicle has definitely changed in a fortuitous way for Indiana after going through a mini slump of losing three straight, now winners of five straight as they head to Maryland, College Park, it's a team that Indiana's better than. We've been having this discussion all day. Of course, I think that they're better than Maryland. That's not That's not the relevance. I don't know if they're going to have to play above and beyond because Maryland's 10-1 at home for a reason. They've lost to only UCLA, so it's and Vegas has them as an underdog. Vegas, usually isn't too far off, but it doesn't mean that they can't win the game. They can, but and I know you said it's more important they win this game than Purdue, and that's a great. It does from a metric standpoint. It is absolutely more important at the end of the year, but does beating the number one team do more for your team going forward?
Beating Purdue at home is always going to be a high point of a season, no matter where the season ends, no matter where the team is, in the broader landscape of things. You want to beat your rival. And, it's not often that you get to face a number one ranked Purdue team. Let's be frank, that doesn't happen that often. Yes, there's going to be a ton of juice. The matchup between Edey and Trace Jackson Davis is obviously going to be one of the premier big men matchups in the country all season. All that being said, winning on the road in conference is always going to be extraordinarily challenging and extraordinarily rewarding at the same time. For Indiana to have lost games at Iowa and Penn State, and then the home game against Northwestern, the road game against Rutgers, you've got to get you've got to get all the wins you can, but particularly on the road and in league, and then just pray you can defend your home court. But a quad one road win pays massive dividends come Selection Sunday. That helps more than a home loss against the number one ranked team hurts. Now, all that being said, lo and behold, Indiana's currently in a three-way tie for third in the Big Ten right now, sitting at 6-4. Obviously, Purdue at 10-1, 2 games clear of Northwestern in second, and then you got Illinois, Indiana, and Rutgers in a three-way tie for third. It's not dead. It's just going to be really tough. Obviously, a win against Purdue this weekend, you find yourselves 2 games back, and you're back in the hunt for the conference title. All that said, though, as you guys were just discussing, we're 21 games into the season. You got 10 games left, and as we put a bow on January basketball, we've reached the point where you know who everybody is at this point. And Indiana's a great example. You've seen them kind of ebb and flow. You saw them certainly stumble throughout December into the first couple weeks of January. And then they got the legs back underneath them. They're riding a 5-game streak. You never want to see a streak end. You want to keep the momentum rolling. But most importantly, the team seems to be figuring out who they are. The chemistry is clicking. The balance is evident. The depth is developing. They're becoming a dangerous team. And that's exactly where you want to see your team trending, the arc you want to see them on once February starts. Because, if the die has been set, now you really have to fill it in and hold that position, if you will, if not grow it. So every game counts for the remainder of the schedule, as we've discussed in weeks past, though. It gets extraordinarily difficult for Indiana. The schedule does. Pretty much starting right now with a road game in College Park. Maryland is a lot like Indiana in a lot of ways. I think the one thing that stands out, they're an extraordinarily experienced team. I think Ken Palm has them 13th in the nation in Division I experience on that roster. Experienced teams tend to do a lot of things not to beat themselves, and it's going to be really tough for Indiana to not beat themselves on the road in this type of environment. And with all the hype, everybody Trace making the Wooden Award, all the chatter, Dickie V's coming this weekend to call the Purdue game. This is one of those classic trap games where it's real easy to look forward to your rival and and miss the opportunity in front of you. But I think this is going to be an absolutely massive opportunity for Indiana to prove that, the team that's dropped a couple against lesser opponents and taken some from, at the time, seemingly superior opponents, that's truly who they are, that they're capable of beating anybody in the league. Well, if that's the case, you got to be like Purdue. You got to go on the road and you got to win those that maybe you're not projected to or are supposed to be tight. And just focus on that very next game on the schedule. Because as we've seen in the past, you get stuck looking ahead and things can turn on you and they can turn in a hurry. So you got to keep the momentum. You got to keep the growth. And hopefully you can keep stacking up W's and improving that seed line as you enter the home stretch of the season here once February starts.
Did you hear the terminology Chronic used, Jim? Trap game.
It's see, now that's where I disagree.
No,
Maryland.
No. This is where I would go with that, in that it's not necessarily a trap game because of who you're playing, but it's like a look ahead. Like, I think it's easy to look at. We got number 1 Purdue coming in to our home on Saturday. That's the bigger game. That's going to be the bigger game. That's why I say it's a trap game.
If you were not playing a team that's 10-1 at home and it's a conference game, I would understand that. But you're going into a place that you're not expected to win. You're not even picked to win. You're not expected to win. So that in and of itself should be enough to get their attention. There's enough time between Tuesday and Saturday. I promise you, this team is not looking ahead. Mike Woodson has them looking at Maryland tonight. Maryland is 10-1, and he is going to challenge them because they're not expected to win this game. I don't pick them to win this game. It would be nice if they did for him, but it's not a trap. A trap game is one that you're supposed to win, and you get knocked off. They're not supposed to win this game. So it's not a trap game in my estimations, but that's me. What the hell do I know?
The one thing that Indiana has struggled with, the one thing where they probably have the thinnest experience, is in handling expectation. You see everybody, all the players sharing all the graphics, now that they're back in the top 25, the wooden watch list, all the accolades start rolling back in on you. And it's real easy to start feeling good about yourself again. You've received outside validation of what you've accomplished so far. But at the end of the day, aside from what's on your record for the season, that's all well and good. But we all know, how much those November, December, and January wins mean if you don't handle your business come February and March. So I'm looking for a team with the maturity, with the experience, to ignore the expectations, to ignore the accolades, and keep playing like everything's falling apart on them and they have to scrap and claw their way back to respectability. And that's one thing, with the exception of probably the North Carolina game, maybe the Xavier game this year, where Indiana has not been particularly adept in managing those expectations and living up to the accolades. And that's the sign of maturity. That's the sign of a team that's got good leadership, is when you turn all that noise off and just focus on the next opponent. So I would love to be proven wrong, but history has proven that this team does not necessarily manage those expectations, those accolades, as well as you would hope. And I hope I'm wrong on that after tonight.
So that brings up an interesting point, because we talked about earlier in the show, somebody made the comment that it would prove that Indiana has turned the corner if they were able to win that game tonight. And I'm interested to get your take on that, because my thought is, these last 5 games, I thought Indiana has turned a corner. The way they've played defensively, the way they've reestablished their focus on that end of the floor, and the way that Trace Jackson Davis is playing. Like, I think that they've already turned that corner, win or lose tonight. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Does that speak more volumes than I'm maybe giving it credit?
It certainly seems as though Indiana has. I felt like after the string of injuries that they amassed, it was they were kind of listless, kind of rudderless for a while. Guys trying to figure out the mix again, get the chemistry right, and the combination of a number of things. I think Trace Jackson Davis has been on an absolute tear on both ends of the floor. Quite honestly, just competing at an extraordinary level. I think Hood Schifino has really upped his game and is playing like the 5-star that you would expect him to be. But I think that goes all the way down the line. I've got people chirping at me about Miller Kopp's production as Indiana has kind of been reascendant here. His production's really dropped off. That doesn't mean that he's not playing his butt off out there. He's just doing it in different ways. He has filled in a different role than perhaps what he was earlier in the season. So
what role is that though? That's the curious thing. I'm not sure what it is. It's not defense.
No,
and it's not offense.
He's trying. I think teams have to respect him on offense. They know that you've got shooters now. You don't see them sagging off Kopp and Trey Galloway like we previously had. They've proven that they have to be respected a little bit. Trace has had to show that he's going to be able to find that open guy when the double or the triple comes and he's getting trapped. He has shown that he can get the ball out to the open man. I think his role right now is still a little bit in flux, but at the end of the day, it's hard to argue that those guys haven't figured out how to play winning basketball together. And I think most importantly, that's all that matters, and you saw it starting in the second half against Wisconsin. They figured out how to squeeze a team to death. We've seen this team get up quite a bit, and we've seen them give those leads away. Figuring out how to establish that lead, the close of the first half against Ohio State was just some of the most beautiful basketball this team has played in a while. And they've seen now that they're capable of that. The big lesson though is how not to let that slide. And, that certainly could have been a 25-point game, but a 16-point game against Ohio State, just as good. Minnesota, I thought, as ugly as that game was, great lesson on how to close out a bad team on the road when nothing seems to be going right. That's a game this team probably loses 9 times out of 10 in the previous years. As ugly as it is, that's a road win that you probably don't get in years past. There's a lot of value in that. And then, the Michigan State, the Illinois games, those were just further statements that maybe that corner had been turned. Now, it's real easy to say that when you're riding a 5-game streak. You got to back it up if that's truly the case. And, we've said it before, and it's always going to be true. Growth isn't always going to be linear. It's not like once you're good permanently. Teams are going to struggle. Guys are going to have off nights. Matchups aren't going to go against you or aren't going to go your way necessarily. You've got to find a way when, if Trace is struggling, who else steps up, who else answers the bell and picks up that slack. And I think what you've seen most importantly over the last 2 weeks is a team where guys are stepping up and showing that they can be that guy on any given night. Now we got to see it with greater consistency, and we need to see it across the board because Lord knows you got some challenges ahead with the schedule.